And welcome, everyone. We are here live for you on News Now with this breaking news situation coming out of Washington and New York, where we are learning President Trump's lawyer has now been targeted as federal agents have seized documents from his attorney, Michael Cohen, in a surprise raid. Federal agents have seized documents from President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. The Associated Press and other news agencies are reporting today, citing Cohen's attorney. The FBI seized documents related to several issues, including Cohen's payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Today, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York executed a series of search warrants and seized the privileged communications between my client, Michael Cohen, and his clients. Cohen's attorney, Stephen Ryan, said, "I have been advised by federal prosecutors that the New York action is in part a referral by the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller." Daniels, whose legal name is Stephanie Clifford, says she had sex with Trump once in 2006 and was paid $130,000 by Trump's personal attorney days before the 2016 presidential election as part of a non-disclosure agreement she is seeking to invalidate. Federal agents armed with search warrants have seized documents from President Donald Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. His defense lawyer said today the raid on Cohen's office was done by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan and was based in part on a referral from special counsel Robert Mueller. According to Cohen's lawyer, Stephen Ryan, the decision by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York to conduct their investigation using search warrants is completely inappropriate and unnecessary. Ryan said in a statement, it resulted in the unnecessary seizure of protected attorney-client communication between a lawyer and his clients. Ryan did not elaborate on the documents that were taken from Cohen's office. Cohen is Trump's longtime personal lawyer. He has been under heavy public scrutiny in recent months for his payment of $130,000 to porn star Stormy Daniels, who claims to have had an affair with President Trump back in the mid-2000s. The New York Times first reported on the raid. Welcome everyone to the Fox 10 News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com. We do appreciate everyone joining us here worldwide for this breaking news alert as federal agents have seized documents from President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. That is what the Associated Press and other news agencies are reporting today, citing Cohen's attorney. The FBI seized documents related to several issues, including Cohen's payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Today, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York executed a series of search warrants and seized the privileged communications between my client, Michael Cohen, and his clients. Cohen's attorney, Stephen Ryan, said, "I have been advised by federal prosecutors that the New York action is in part a referral by the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller." Daniels, whose legal name is Stephanie Clifford, says she had sex with Trump once in 2006 and was paid $130,000 by Trump's personal attorney days before the 2016 presidential election. Once again, folks, we are here for you live and worldwide on Fox News Now, part of FoxNetPhoenix.com. We do appreciate you joining us from all over the world right now as we continue to live stream you this breaking news alert. We'll have much more news in just a moment. And if we get any more updates, of course, we will bring that to you live right here on News Now. Take you out to the United Nations, where a special meeting, an emergency meeting, is underway right now in regards to Syria.
Responsibilities should evidence of the use of chemical substances prohibited under the relevant international treaties be brought to light. We take this last related fact to recall the obligation of all parties to take tangible steps for the full implementation of Resolution 2118 of 2013. Moreover, we underscore the fact that recent events and the way in which the fact-finding mission's hands are tied make it abundantly clear that there is a pressing need for an independent investigation mechanism of the United Nations to be set up, whose task must be focused on preventing impunity, identifying those responsible, and preventing, to the best of its abilities, future attacks. As far as the Republic of Equatorial Guinea is concerned, no use of chemical weapons should go uninvestigated or unpunished, for which reason the alarming information coming out of Syria, particularly that pertaining to the use of chemical weapons targeting civilians, as we've heard in the case of Duma, which we're discussing today, as well as similar events in the past, must be investigated in an exhaustive, fair and impartial as well as independent way by the international bodies, upholding the standards of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW. The outcomes of the aforementioned investigations must be made public, and those responsible must answer for their crimes before the implacable gaze of Lady Justice. President, the fact that chemical substances continue to be used, particularly targeting civilians, is cause for serious alarm for the government of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. At the general debate, the 72nd session of the General Assembly of this House, the President of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, His Excellency Mr. Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, condemned in the strongest possible terms the use, the manufacture, the stockpiling and the distribution of chemical weapons in armed conflicts. It is worth recalling at this juncture that no member of this Council should consider itself exempt from this obligation, an obligation that reflects Chapter 1 of the Charter of the United Nations that enshrines the determination of the member states of this House to forge a world of peace and to ensure the well-being of humankind. Moreover, I would make the point that the Security Council now finds itself at a crossroads as far as options go. We can either strengthen the presence of international forces with a view to future military intervention, as some military powers have been hinting of late, or we can pursue international negotiations, be they on the Geneva, Astana, Sochi or Ankara tracks. We need look no further than the history books to find a plethora of proof that military intervention has never solved a conflict. Rather, it leads to fragmentation of the theatres of war and prolongs conflict, sowing desolation and ruin in its wake. President, as far as the Republic of Equatorial Guinea is concerned, the only solution to the Syrian conflict is to be found in the words spoken yesterday by Pope Francis in the traditional Sunday Mass in the St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. And I quote, "There is no good war, there is no bad war. Nothing can justify the use of such instruments of violence against unarmed people and unarmed populations. Political and military leaders must choose another path, the path of negotiations, the only path that might lead to a peace that is not the handmaiden of death and destruction." And here I end the quotation by His Holiness the Pope. President, we conclude our statement by reiterating the appeal already made by the Republic of Equatorial Guinea on past occasions to those countries and actors who have influence in Syria as well as in Israel and Palestine to wield that influence in order to push the parties involved in these conflicts to move to mitigate the suffering of their people and to push them to sit down to negotiate to put an end to this deep-rooted and serious threat to international peace and security, which remains entrenched in the Middle East. Thank you very much. I thank the representative of Equatorial Guinea for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan.
Mr. President, we thank Special Envoy Stefan de Mistura and Deputy High Representative for Disarmament Affairs Thomas Makram for their briefings. We express gratitude to the members of the Council for initiating this emergency meeting, which we hope will help to take timely and objective investigation of the alleged incident in Duma. We firmly believe that the UN Security Council remains the main and sole body authorized to counter threats to international peace and security. Unfortunately, the situation within the Council is becoming increasingly strained. In order to achieve proper solution of these critical issues, it is of utmost importance to ensure that the Council acts unanimously in a balanced and pragmatic manner. This requires from us greater flexibility, negotiability, rising above our national interests for the benefit of achieving peace and stability. Any controversy with prejudices and mutual accusations without getting the conclusive results and irrefutable evidence will have only destructive effect. That will not lead to the results that the world community expects from us. As for the chemical attacks in Syria, we mourn together with the families of those killed and express our solidarity to them in the face of such atrocities, by which innocent civilians become victims of the relentless confrontation of the opposing parties. Kazakhstan has always taken a firm and resolute stand, uncompromisingly condemning any use of chemical weapons as the most heinous action and unacceptable war crime. As for the situation in Duma, we call for early investigation of this alleged incident and clarification of all the circumstances. The Council has the greatest responsibility to act on verifiable facts, not only before the world community, but before ourselves. But more than that, it is history itself which will become judge to our decisions after a certain time. Therefore, we need to make sure of all the details of the incident. In this regard, we would like to draw attention to the following aspects. First, are there any other reliable sources in addition to White Helmet's claims, and who can verify the veracity of the assessments and testimonies of these sources? Some claim that the number of victims is 70 people, while others report that more than 150 victims have succumbed, yet others believe it is only 25 victims. Only one victim is too much. But today, Russian Federation denies the attack at all. So there are many allegations and assumptions regarding the very fact of using a chemical poisonous substance. Secondly, we consider it is important to take into account the fact that the government of Syria has repeatedly notified us and requested us to check their reports that a number of terrorist groups on the side of the opposition were making attempts to transfer chemical weapons and prepare chemical attacks on the territory of Eastern Ghouta. Actually, they were not given due attention and with opportunities to verify the full facts. We are not advocating for one or the other side of this conflict, but demand only a full and objective investigation on the basis of which we can make a thoughtful decision. Thirdly, we consider it's imperative to have an independent investigation. And here we again recall the urgent need for an investigative mechanism, the recreation of which depends on the leading members of this Council, who must make every possible effort to find a common ground on that. We urgently need an objective and verified information, as well as immediate, independent, transparent, and unbiased investigation before any decision or any action, including a unilateral one, is taken. We fully support the proposal that the OPCW fact-finding mission be sent at the earliest. We're sure that the Syrian side is really interested in objective investigation, so Damascus and the opposing parties should provide all assistance and secure access for the speedy visit of the OPCW inspectors to the incident sites to collect facts on the ground. Finally, we once again call for the preservation and strengthening of the unity of this Council and reach a consensual decision to preserve peace and stability in the world. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the beginning, we thank you for holding this meeting promptly. We were one of the countries that called for holding this meeting. We thank the briefers, Mr. Stefan de Mistura, the Special Envoy of the Secretary General for Syria, and Mr. Thomas Makram, Deputy to the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. Since the beginning of this year, the state of Kuwait has occupied the Arab seat in the Security Council. One of our most important priorities that we have declared clearly before we started our membership is that we defend and uphold Arab causes and give voice to these concerns of Arab states, and we work towards peaceful solutions. And we deeply regret that Arab questions on the agenda of the Council has not seen any real critical or tangible improvement, particularly the Syrian crisis. The Syrian crisis, which witnesses more deterioration. Security Council resolutions on these questions are not implemented. The Council is in charge of maintaining international peace and security, and it is unable to shoulder its responsibility. It is divided and has no unity as it faces these threats. Hence, these crises continue, and the suffering of the people in our region continue as well. Mr. President, the state of Kuwait condemns in the strongest term the heinous attacks by rockets and barrel bombs against the residential areas under siege in eastern Ghouta, including the attack on Juma on Saturday, the 7th of April. 5 days ago, we marked the first anniversary of the Khan Shaykhun incident, where chemical weapons were used in accordance with what the JIM confirmed, and it did identify who used them. And 2 days ago, tens of civilians, including children and women, were killed and injured in attacks and airstrikes against Juma, and many cases of asphyxiation were recorded. And many international reports confirmed that these crimes are tantamount to crimes against humanity and war crimes, which brings us back to the main demand that we have all agreed on in this hall, that we need to create a new mechanism to identify whether chemical weapons were used and identify who used them, and hold the perpetrators accountable in Syria. A mechanism that would guarantee investigations that are impartial, transparent, and professional in all chemical attacks in Syria, to maintain the principle of ending impunity. The perpetrators of those chemical crimes in Syria for 5 years have enjoyed impunity, no punishment whatsoever, particularly in August 2013, when we saw with our own eyes the first crime of the use of chemical weapons in eastern Ghouta. We do not want to mark a first anniversary of the Juma attack without a conviction. We want an accountability mechanism established by this Council. We want an accountability that would identify who's in charge, who perpetrated those crimes of chemical use in Syria, and they need to be held to account, be it a government, an entity, a group, or individuals, in accordance with the provisions of Resolution 2018. The Council needs to shoulder its responsibility towards the maintenance of international peace and security. the use of chemical weapons is a true and real threat to the non-proliferation regime. The continued attacks against civilians in medical facilities and residential areas, whether through airstrikes or the attacks by artillery, are all flagrant violations of the international community's will and Security Council resolutions, particularly Resolution 2401, that demanded a 30-day ceasefire without delay at the least. Provisions of Resolution 2118 were clear and definite, as it called for accountability vis-à-vis the use of chemical weapons in Syria, as it is a flagrant violation of IHL and human rights law. However, what we see now is a clear violation of the provisions of said resolution. We, as members of this Council, cannot accept the status quo. The continued use of chemical weapons in Syria. It is another disappointment for the Syrian people. We were not able to end their suffering in the use of these weapons in Syria. Mr. President, this Council shoulders a collective responsibility. The Syrian people are sick and tired of following meetings of this Council without seeing tangible results on the ground. This Council was able, at many points in time in this particular bloody conflict, was able to reach a unified position to end the crisis. We need to overcome our political differences and establish a new accountability mechanism in Syria that has professionalism, credibility, and impartiality. And these elements are available in the American draft resolution under discussion, which includes updates on the Douma incident. We call all members of the Council to build on this draft as a good basis for any negotiation on a future mechanism. We continue to look for a political solution as the only means to end the crisis in all its dimensions. The political roadmap is clear and agreed upon based on the Geneva I communique and Resolution 2254, and in a way that would maintain the sovereignty, independence, and unity of Syria and meet the aspirations of the Syrian people in a decent life. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Thank you very much, President. We're grateful for the briefings that we've heard from Mr. Staffan de Mistura, the Special Envoy of the Secretary-General for Syria, and from Mr. Thomas Markram, the Deputy to the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. President, we would like to begin by expressing our deep-rooted alarm in light of the latest reports of the alleged use of chemical weapons in the city of Douma. Bolivia would like to reiterate its condemnation of the use of chemical weapons or agents as weapons because we consider they are an unjustifiable act and a criminal act as well. We believe that there can never be a justification for the use of these weapons or agents, irrespective of the circumstances and irrespective of by whom they are used, as they constitute a serious crime under international law and a serious threat to international peace and security. We believe that the fact-finding mission, in line with its mandate, should, in the most methodological and objective way, verify the use of these chemical weapons. Should their use be verified, then their use must be transparently investigated in order to ensure that the perpetrators can be identified and they can be tried by the appropriate bodies in order to ensure that there is no impunity. We need a representative, independent, international investigative body that can carry out a credible and conclusive investigation. And that is a major challenge before all of us. We must ensure that we live up to a responsibility of not politicizing the work of this Security Council nor exploiting it for our own ends. President, we regret the fact that to date there are still obstacles that hamper the full implementation of Resolution 2401, and we call upon all stakeholders to spare no effort in order to ensure the full and effective implementation of said resolution across the entire Syrian territory. We decry the ongoing shelling and indiscriminate attacks destroying mainly civilian infrastructure such as health facilities. We also condemn any military activity in residential areas. Such actions only lead to further displacement, injury, and increase the number of dead, adding to the already heavy toll of 500,000 dead as a result of the situation. We call upon all parties to guarantee respect for international humanitarian law, international human rights law, including humanitarian access across Syria to all persons in need, in line with the relevant resolutions of the Security Council. President, we reiterate that the conflict in Syria is not one that can be solved militarily. The only solution is through an inclusive political process which involves dialogue and negotiation, and which is led for and by the Syrian people. This will allow for sustainable peace to be achieved in that country without any outside pressure or meddling, in line with the provisions of Resolution 2554. We reject any attempts to introduce fragmentation or sectarianism in Syria. President, Bolivia would like to make it clear once again that we reject the use of force, or the threat of the use of force. We also reject the pursuit of any unilateral course of action, given that such unilateral courses of action are illegal and contravene the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Moreover, they undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic, and they also move us further away from any political solution. President, as my final point, on the events in Salisbury, we would like to reiterate the need for an independent, transparent and depoliticized investigation to take place in line with the prevailing standards and norms of international law, particularly within the framework of the Chemical Weapons Convention. We believe that cooperation of the relevant parties in the Salisbury case is vital for headway to be made through the relevant diplomatic channels as we seek to solve this event and to strengthen, as we so do, the non-proliferation regime. Thank you very much, President. I thank the representative of Bolivia for his statement. I shall now make a statement in my national capacity. We would like to thank Messrs. Staffan de Mistura and Thomas Markram for the information that they have shared with the Council. Peru expresses its deep-rooted concern in the wake of fresh reports on the use of chemical weapons targeting civilians in Syria, including minors, this time in Duma. We underscore that, by way of response, there is a pressing need for an in-depth investigation. Peru condemns any use of chemical weapons wheresoever such use occurs. We would recall the fact that such use constitutes an atrocity crime, a threat to the maintenance of international peace and security, and such use of chemical weapons also violates the relevant non-proliferation regime and is a violation of international humanitarian law. We believe that, as an immediate course of action, the Syrian government and all the parties to the conflict, including those countries with influence that they can wield on the ground, must abide by and implement the humanitarian ceasefire ordered by this Council through Resolution 2401. Said parties must also cooperate with the fact-finding mission dispatched by the OPCW. To that latter end, we once again highlight the need to endow ourselves with an independent and impartial mechanism to attribute responsibilities. Investigations must lead to the trial and punishment of perpetrators. The members of this Security Council cannot countenance impunity. We also feel it worth recalling that any response to the Syrian conflict and to the atrocities therein must be pursued in line with the Charter of the United Nations and guided by that framework. Peru therefore opposes any use or threat of use of force that violates international law. We would like to reiterate our alarm in light of the worrying consequences that the continuation of the unbridled barbarity witnessed in the Syrian conflict represent for stability in the Middle East and for the wider international order based as it is on the minimum standards of humanity and peaceful coexistence. By that same token, I wish to conclude by appealing to to the members of the Security Council to pursue unity and the common good as our watchwords, commensurate with our solemn responsibilities. As far as the Syrian case is concerned, this will entail the implementation of the ceasefire and an effective protection of civilians, as well as the investigation of the atrocity crimes committed and the sanction of those responsible. It will also entail a genuine resumption of the political dialogue on the basis of Resolution 2254 and the Geneva Communique, all this to usher in lasting peace that the people of Syria so desperately desire. Thank you very much. I now resume my function as President of the Council. The representative of the Russian Federation has requested the floor to make a further statement. The Russian Federation has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, like my Dutch colleague and friend, have 3 points to put forward. The first point is as follows. I wish to turn to my distinguished colleague, the Permanent Representative of the United States, Nikki Haley, with a request, a kind and a courteous request to refrain henceforth from naming any legitimate governments, from labeling them as regimes. And specifically, I am referring to the Russian Federation. I've already stated this request once already, but Ambassador Haley was not present here, and I requested that this be conveyed by colleagues, and now I state this personally. Next time, I will halt the meeting for a point of order if this takes place again, if this continues. Second, the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom mentioned that Syria is different from Salisbury and that in Syria there is no investigation, and in Salisbury there is an investigation. We would very much like to learn more detail about this investigation. We would be grateful if you were to familiarize us with this investigation. For the moment, we know nothing other than that the alleged victims of the use of a chemical warfare agent were suddenly, thank God, suddenly turned out to be alive, and it appears that they are almost fully healthy now. However, nobody has seen them yet, and we fear for the state of these important witnesses. For the moment, according to reports from newspapers, we learned that the CIA proposed to shelter the Skripals in the U.S. and to give them new names. The participation of the CIA here in and of itself speaks volumes. However, this also means that we possibly, perhaps will never see these people. Key witnesses with what took place, What else do we know? We know about the expeditious destruction of the pets of the Skripals, their household pets, and their cremation of these pets and their guinea pigs. And we also know about their intent to take down their home, to demolish their home and a restaurant. We also know that Yulia Skripal's sister, Victoria, and who wished to meet with her, her request for a visa, British visa, was denied. Why is that the case? That's all we know. So once again, I would note that we very much wish to learn more detail about what is taking place. We would be grateful to our British colleagues if they would regularly familiarize ourselves with the course of the investigation. And lastly, third, Mr. President, today we gathered here not to address a situation in Duma. The agenda item is called Threats to International Peace and Security. And yet, of course, the situation around Duma and the so-called chemical attack served as a prompt for this. But today's meeting, what Staffan de Mistura spoke about and what the Secretary General previously spoke about, we are moving to a dangerous threshold. And unfortunately, this is not being understood by those playing those dangerous games and spreading about and disseminating reckless threats. reckless threats, irresponsible threats. Today, once again, we heard what we have heard on a number of occasions already. None of our Western colleagues wishes to hear and to listen to the objective information. Nobody casts any doubt on the sole version of what took place. What kind of investigation? Why do you need it? You've accused Damascus of a chemical weapons attack, not only prior to an investigation, but even prior to the reports surfacing about this incident. You are not convinced by the information we provided to you today. You merely don't wish to hear this. We already told you there are no witnesses to the use of chemical weapons at all. There are no traces of weapons, neither the victims, neither killed, nor the wounded. Nobody turned to the hospitals. The footage that was shown was clearly staged, which was provided by the White Helmets. We demand that the OPCW mission immediately visit Duma, immediately visit to the area of the alleged chemical weapons attack, to interview medical staff and residents, and to collect soil samples. My British colleague mentioned that an investigation alone can determine who the perpetrators were. I agree. However, this in no way prevents you from identifying perpetrators, labeling the Syrian regime as this. These two don't really go hand in hand. The regime, quote unquote, I stress that the regime, quote unquote, I reiterate, we insist that the OPCW mission immediately visit to Duma. The Syrian authorities and Russian troops stand ready to provide the necessary conditions for this to take place. And lastly, with respect to the investigative mechanism in the independent, we also are in favor of this. Let us recall that our draft resolution with a proposal to set up such a mechanism is in blue. And we stand ready to adopt it today, if necessary. Thank you, sir.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. The representative of the United Kingdom has requested the floor to make a further statement. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I apologise for taking the floor again, but just to clarify, the Russian ambassador's English is far too good for him not to have understood me when I spoke on 5th of April. The investigation that is underway into Salisbury is an independent police investigation, and the United Kingdom will be very pleased to update the Council as and when we have something to say. One more thing, now I have the floor, if I may, Mr. President. The other difference between Salisbury and Syria is that the United Kingdom is a party to the Chemical Weapons Convention in good standing, and the Syrian government has not complied with its obligations as certified by OPCW. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. The American representative said that Russia spends resources to support what she called the Syrian regime. My question to her: what about the United States? The United States is spending its resources in Syria on what? To provide food and milk to Syrian children, or to provide armed groups with weapons, armed groups that have committed the most heinous crimes against the Syrian people? Or is it spending resources on your planes and fighter jets that have been so active in Syria? My American colleague has been threatening my country in most Security Council sessions. Does she acknowledge then that her administration does not give this Security Council any weight? It does not respect the principles of international law or the United Nations as a whole? Let's test the credibility of what she presented. And note that I'm not referring to the American administration as the American regime, because it's shameful. We cannot do this in the United Nations. So let's test the credibility of what she's presented. She said this Security Council must act to achieve justice in Syria. Okay then. My test is her administration should allow the disclosure of the results of the UNSCOM. They investigated the presence of WMDs in Iraq for 18 years. This commission was headed by a Swede, Hans Blix, and as you know, this commission didn't find anything after 18 years of investigation or examination. They didn't find any chemical weapons, they didn't find Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola. Nevertheless, in 2008, towards the end of 2008, the Security Council, in a closed meeting, decided to end the work of this commission and bury the archives of this commission in iron boxes. And only the Secretary General knows how to open these boxes. He's the only one who has the locks. There was one condition: these boxes can only be opened after 60 years. What is so shameful in these archives? Why did we need to bury them in boxes that cannot be opened in 60 years? Mr. President, the government of the Syrian Arab Republic condemns in the strongest terms the ruthless Israeli aggression that took place this morning on T4 airport in Homs Governorate, killing and injuring a number of civilians. This aggression is a flagrant violation of Security Council Resolution 350 of 1974 and Security Council resolutions on counterterrorism. This aggression would not have occurred were it not for the unlimited and consistent support by the American administration to Israel. The American administration guarantees immunity so that Israel is not held accountable. This allows Israel to continue to practice state terrorism and threaten peace and security in the region and in the world. Of course, Western countries did not refer even to the Israeli aggression in their statements. That means that they are complicit and they support this aggression. Unfortunately, my dear friend de Mistura did not listen to Netanyahu saying this morning that it is Israel that launched this aggression. This is why I was surprised when he said that the United Nations is not able to verify the identity of the perpetrators of this aggression. Well, Netanyahu himself, Mr. Mistura, is saying that he launched this aggression. Why didn't you refer to Israel? Why didn't you explicitly say Israel is to blame for this aggression? This Israeli aggression is an indirect response to the successes of the Syrian Arab Army. The army succeeded in expelling armed terrorist groups from the suburbs of Damascus, rural Damascus, and other Syrian territories. Those groups have been shelling the Syrian people, kidnapping civilians, detaining them, using them as human shields. Damascus alone was targeted by 3,000 missiles within 3 months, killing 155 and injuring 865 civilians, most of them women and children. The Syrian government stresses that the repeated Israeli aggressions did not and will not protect Israeli agents from terrorist groups. They also will not and did not divert the attention of the Syrian Arab Army from the decisive military victory over terrorists. Mr. President, the American anti-racism activist Martin Luther King said, and I quote, "A lie is like a snowball. The further you roll it, the bigger it becomes." End of quote. It seems that this wise saying holds true at any time and at any place. The governments of some countries are lying incessantly. Fortunately, though, they're not quite perfecting the details of their web of lies. Just as the famous character of Baron Münchhausen in German literature. Mr. President, some permanent members have become professional liars, and this in itself is a weapon of mass destruction. Through lying, Israel was occupied. Through Palestine was occupied. Through lying, they fueled the war in the Korean Peninsula. Through lying, they invaded Vietnam. Through lying, they invaded Grenada. Through lying, they occupied Iraq. Through lying, they destroyed Libya. Through lying, they established Takfiri terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, Taliban, ISIS, Al-Nusra Front, Jaish al-Islam, and the list goes on. And through lying, these countries are trying to defeat Syria and prepare the ground for an aggression. It is worthy to note that the statement, the negative statement of the U.S. representative is in contradiction with a statement made by General Matthews, Defense Secretary. He said in an interview with Newsweek 2 days ago, with the journalist Ian Winke, this journalist used a title for this interview. I will read it out in English.
Now, Mattis admits there was no evidence President Assad used poison gas on his own people. هذا ليس وزير دفاع سوريا. هذا وزير دفاع الإدارة الأمريكية.
This is not the Syrian defense minister, it's the American defense secretary. How coherent is this administration? Mr. President, on the 10th of December 2012, so 6 years ago, we conveyed a formal letter to the Council with the symbol A/67/628. So before the first time the operators of terrorist groups claimed that sarin gas was used in Khan al-Assal on March 19, 2013. We informed you that the United States, the United Kingdom, and France have launched a campaign of allegations claiming that the Syrian government might have used chemical weapons. Back then, we warned that such allegations would encourage governments that sponsor terrorism to provide chemical weapons to armed terrorist groups, and then claim that the Syrian government had used those weapons. What happened in the past few years in Khan al-Assal, Al-Ghouta, Kafr Zeta, Latamina, Tel Minnis, and Khan Shaykhun, and other villages and towns in Syria confirms unequivocally that what we had warned of 5 years ago. The United States, the United Kingdom, and France have been so eager to hold one meeting after the other, based on fabricated information. This is part of a deep crisis that we're witnessing, and they want to involve other Council members in this crisis. These three countries, created in the Security Council since 2013, a big elephant of lies and deceit, and this elephant is living today in this chamber and is stamping with its huge feet on the credibility of this council. It seems that these countries called for holding this session to support terrorists and to obstruct the agreement reached about Duma. However, these countries were a bit late because the terrorists wanted this meeting to be held before they were forced to reach an agreement with the Syrian state to leave their strongholds and hand over their weapons. These countries were late in fulfilling their promises to the terrorists. It would have been better not to repeat this broken record and not to rely on false reports from mercenaries, so-called white helmets, that were established by British intelligence officer James Lomizere. He's British, but his name is French. What proves that these countries were lying is that the residents of Duma left the city safely. 170,000 civilians left the city safely. Those terrorists chose to reach an agreement with the Syrian state as the last resort for them and their families. Buses are transferring them and their families to the city of Jarablus after they refused to settle their affairs and they chose to go to the city of Jarablus. The vast majority of residents chose to stay where they were and to be on the side of the Syrian state. It turns out that allegations of some states, some of the members of this council, on the deteriorating humanitarian situation in eastern Ghouta were lies, just as what we witnessed in Aleppo. As it turned out, that warehouses of terrorist groups were full of medication and food, monopolized by some elements who sold these items to civilians at exorbitant prices. At this point, I have to ask, ladies and gentlemen, did the three countries call to hold this meeting to legitimize the Israeli aggression that occurred this morning, or to impede and obstruct the implementation of the agreement? In this context, I must thank the representative of the Russian Federation that recognized the true nature of what these countries were preparing for. So he called to hold a meeting under the agenda item Threats to International Peace and Security. This is the correct title. Mr. President, we conveyed to the Security Council, the OPCW, and what used to be called the Joint Investigative Mechanism, 145 letters, the latest on April 1st, 2018. 145 letters. And I thank the permanent representative of Kazakhstan, who noted that you don't read those letters and you don't respond to those letters.
On Quivira, this is going to be discussed as
Fox 10 News Alert.
And welcome live here to News Now. We take you out to Kansas City right now, where there is a police chase happening right now. You can see the white pickup truck. We are watching live here for you worldwide on News Now. Thanks to all our viewers here that continue to watch live with us here on News Now, as we're just getting this stream in. white pickup truck here in Kansas City. We don't usually get these chases there in Kansas City. Usually they're usually in Los Angeles or out here. Viewer discretion is advised, everybody, as this driver is now going in and out of lanes here, being more erratic. He is coming up against heavy traffic here, though, so that is a cause for concern for not only the general public, but also police, as they're going to try to navigate and try to see how they can stop this individual. We do not know the reason why this individual is on the run. Usually the suspect, though, it is a stolen vehicle or some sort of robbery, burglary situation, but we'll wait for those details right now. Any way you look at it, you have a suspect. Ooh, the stop sticks just tried to be deployed. They were deployed, but did not hit the tires there. Okay, so stop sticks were deployed, not successful though, at least from this vantage point. We continue to watch here live. Welcome on News Now. Let us know where you are watching from. Is this white pickup truck continuing to get heavy traffic right now? It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. He's coming up on heavy traffic here. Another stop stick attempt, and it was not successful there. And thank you to all our viewers right now in Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live joining us here. If you're just joining us, welcome. We do appreciate you being part of the stream here. Let us know where you are watching from. 2 unsuccessful attempts for stop sticks have occurred, and now this suspect is really putting a pedal to the metal here. And we will see here, but now these speeds have really increased at this moment. We'll see just how long this can last here, but within the last 2 minutes, this driver has become more and more erratic. Obviously, a huge cause for concern. We hope for the very best for everybody out on these roadways, especially the police. Hopefully they'll be able to get this suspect just to stop. But so many times we see situations like this where the suspect knows that there's multiple choppers high above, that there's police behind them. What do? They want to continue to go on because why? Well, they are very selfish when it comes to these moments. They know that they'll eventually be caught. They just want to try to outrun some of these moments and try to just extend their last moments of freedom, really. But we'll continue to stream here live for you until the conclusion, or until this chopper needs to maybe catch some fuel here. But this is really fast speeds now that this white pickup truck is happening here. So if you're just joining us, 2 unsuccessful attempts for stop sticks by the police. We did witness that. You're joining us here live on News Now. Thank you so much for joining us here worldwide. Let us know where you are watching from, either on Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live or fox10phoenix.com. But you see the multiple choppers up here as they continue to watch this suspect. Continue to be on the run here. We'll try to get the very latest here for you, but really this suspect on that shoulder area, now getting into that far left lane. Thanks to all our viewers here continuing to let us know where you are watching from, and the thousands of you all part of the stream. Thank you so much for being part of it. We hope that this will be an ending that doesn't result in a crash. So many times we see these things and either the suspect crashes or in some sort of altercation with police, maybe will flee the vehicle. We just hope that this person will come to their senses and say, hey, you know what? I've done enough damage here and just want to end things the way they are, but usually that's not the case. I will say though, these types of chases tend to go a little bit longer on the highways because you're not dealing with any intersections. The only thing that could really stop this at this moment would be a crash, or would be the suspect, using getting caught up in stop sticks. So we'll continue to wait and see just what happens here. Usually these last longer on the highways than if they were, okay, we got the police here, okay, he's doing a U-turn right here, getting off of that highway, now on more of a frontage area, or could be going the opposite way here. Okay, looks like they will be giving up here. Viewer discretion is advised, everybody. They do have the suspect there on the ground. There we go. Just as I was saying that these usually last a little bit longer. Viewer discretion is advised, everybody, as the guns are out right now. Suspect on the ground. Looks to be cooperating at this moment. You have that one officer shutting down the truck there. We are learning from media reports here that just before we went live here, a female passenger got out of the truck. So that was just moments ago, too. But you see this person here, and we don't see this too often, where the suspect comes out and has, look at that, wow. Has the vest on there. So we don't know what led up to this chase here, but this is all completed right now. Great job by officers. Just when you thought it would be a little bit longer, that suspect pulled a U-turn and stopped right there and got out. He had enough. He decided he did too many risks. Luckily, it doesn't appear that anybody else got hurt here. A very fortunate situation here, though, the suspect giving up and not getting in a crash and injuring innocent people or officers here. Now they will put that suspect in jail there, and you can imagine the amount of different charges that person is looking at right now. If you're just joining us here, welcome to the News Now. We do appreciate you guys joining us here worldwide on News Now, as this police chase is now over in Kansas City, Kansas. That has to be one of maybe the first chases there, but the suspect gets out of that reflection vest, out of that truck there. So you can see they're patting him down, making sure that no weapons or anything there. Now talking to the highway patrol there. We are being told that right before we got this feed in, that a female passenger exited the white truck. So they'll be trying to get her as well, or they've probably already picked that suspect up as well. This is in Kansas City, Kansas, just near the US 50 and I-435 there. If you're just joining us here, police chase ends just about 5 minutes ago here on News Now. Both suspects in custody at this moment, Kansas City, Kansas. You're watching on News Now on Facebook Live and fox10phoenix.com. you can see sort of the backup that it's causing this because of that police chase ending there. And then you're obviously getting the people that are going past this all looking to the right there, wanting to see what exactly is going on, and that's slowing down the traffic as well. So it's really a chain reaction right now. All right, folks, and that's going to do it for us here on the Facebook Live. Come and join us on fox10phoenix.com. News Now does continue. All right, everybody, we are now going to take you out live to Austin, Texas. Police news conference happening right now. Let's listen in.
City Chief during the bombings investigation, Deputy Austin City Chief Michelle Fernald, and AUSA's Mike Galdo and Matt Harding. We're here today to announce that earlier today, U.S. Magistrate Judge Mark Lane dismissed a complaint that my office had filed on March 20th against Mark Condit of Pflugerville, Texas, in connection with the bombings investigation. Magistrate Judge Lane also unsealed, in part, an affidavit that we filed in support of that complaint, also on March 20th. As you all know, Mr. Condit killed himself a couple hours after we filed that complaint, but we have been waiting to ensure that his remains were confirmed and identified, and to determine which parts of that affidavit could be unsealed consistent with public safety and investigative needs. So the Travis County Medical Examiner, in conjunction with the Round Rock Justice of the Peace, Dane Johnson, determined that those were, in fact, his remains. We then started the process of determining what part of that affidavit could be unsealed. As I'm sure you all know, the press has a qualified right of access to judicial records, and so judges balance security needs, safety needs, investigative needs against the right of the public to know what's in court documents. And so today we've furnished to you the partially redacted affidavit, and that explains our basis for probable cause on the night of March 20th to seek an arrest warrant and to file a criminal complaint against Mark Condit. The thing that we charged him with at the time was one count of the unlawful possession and transfer of a destructive device. That is an offense under the National Firearms Act, a very old statute from the 1930s. It's actually found in the Internal Revenue Code, if you can believe it. That does not mean that was the only thing we would have charged him with, nor does it mean that District Attorney Moore would not have also charged him with state-level offenses. That offense was included just so we could get the complaint on file and get the obtain the arrest warrant and pick him up and bring him into custody. Very likely we would have sought an indictment after that that included far more serious charges than the destructive device charge. So if you're wondering, hey, why is this the only charge in the complaint, that's why. So just a couple things to follow up on, and then we'll turn it over for questions. One, the investigation continues. We're looking at his intent, his motivations. There are no further suspects at this time, and we do not have any reason to believe there's a further destructive device out there, although the public should remain vigilant for suspicious packages. But we are looking through very voluminous computer records to examine his intent and motivations, and so there is still an ongoing investigation, and we do urge the public to remain vigilant about suspicious packages and to contact the APD if you notice a suspicious package. Second, I want to reiterate what we've said a number of times, which is that there was unbelievable cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. And speaking personally, I know we had great cooperation with the District Attorney's Office. We were kind of hand in hand throughout the investigation, thinking about what were our legal avenues for investigative techniques, what charges would we bring, and so forth. So it was great cooperation. And in fact, far before this event occurred, everybody up here had been working together to set up a crisis center to be ready for just this kind of thing. And so we were ready to go to get all our resources together and coordinated and on the same track when we realized we had a serial bomber on our hands here. Finally, this is National Crime Victims Awareness Week, or Crime Victims Rights Week, I should say, and just want to again reiterate our sympathy for the families of the victims and for the surviving victims. Two innocent lives were lost here, and others were horrifically injured. And we want to make sure the victims are front and center as we think about this case, think about what to do going forward, and conclude the investigation. With that, I will turn it over to questions, and you can ask me questions, and I might turn a couple over to my colleagues if that makes more sense.
So can you explain to us why this complaint is being dismissed? I think I know why, but I just want you to spell it out for me.
The defendant is dead, so there's not going to be a prosecution.
Hi. It says here that one of the packages was had the address of 6705 Galindo. Does that suggest that the homes, the places were targeted? Because we've been led to believe that they were random.
Well, I think when people have spoken of random, they mean the lack of a connection between the suspect or between the different targets, not that there was no address on the package.
Do you still believe that Mark Condon worked alone?
There are no other suspects in custody at this time, and we have no reason to believe that there are other suspects. But as I said, the investigation's ongoing, so I don't want to close the book on that. But no other suspects are in custody at this time.
Did those people you talked to include the roommates that of the multiple other individuals were investigated for potential?
Investigators have talked with roommates, yes.
And have they been cleared, or what's their status now?
They're not in custody at this time, but the investigation is ongoing.
Prior to the Home Depot surveillance video, can you give us some information on how you already had a photograph of Condon that you could show the confidential source to match it up with the
Turn that over to either Special Agent Milewski. I'm not sure if that's
There wasn't a confidential source, but the photograph, we had a photograph from when Mark Condon delivered the 2 packages at the FedEx facility. That was the first time we had any photographs of this individual.
Could you clarify how fries came onto your map? How did that purchase turn up in your investigation?
Sorry, ask that again.
End up in your radar.
So when we investigate a bombing, one of the first things we do is our explosive specialists put the device back together. So then we identify what components are used, and then we go out to stores that sell those components or similar components and start identifying individuals that have purchased either one or multiple components. So that was done in stores throughout the metro area.
At any point, will the reporting of the confession be released at any point, or possibly dash cam video from the SWAT officers that responded that day, that when he died?
So there is a video that we have of the takedown of the suspect in this incident of the bomber, and investigation, because as you all will recall, it also resulted in an officer-involved shooting after he detonated that bomb. So that is still an ongoing investigation, and we're going to wait for the Williamson County District Attorney's Office to close out their review of that case before we make a determination on the video involved in the takedown where the bomber.
All right, we are losing that right now. Let's see if we could get that back here for you. They might have to be resetting some settings there because it was getting a little hazy for that live shot. We'll continue to wait here, see if we could get it back here for you. Looks like they might be resetting it. Show you the Capitol in the meantime, and hopefully we could get that back here for you.
Says a number of statements that concern us, and we just don't want that to live forever on the internet. There's obviously a discussion between public disclosure and openness. I understand that 100%. But from the review of looking at active shooters, from the review of past criminals, we are very concerned, and the last thing we want is this to inspire somebody else.
Is it videotape or an audio tape, sir?
It is actually, it's a videotape that only has audio.
Would releasing a transcript be part of the possibilities going ahead?
We've discussed that. We're in process right now to discuss how do we meet the public's desire to know versus the public safety concerns that we have. So there's a debate going on right now. What do we do? What's the right way to answer this question? We don't have the answer yet, to be quite honest. And as the chief said, it's still an active investigation, so either way, we're not prepared to release it.
Who was the final call in releasing or withholding the video?
Well, I think first you have to deal with the investigation of the officer-involved shooting, and then it's a discussion between all of us as to what is the proper way to go forward.
Looking at the victims, were these victims chosen at random, or
As I said earlier, the investigation to motive intent is ongoing. I have not seen information so far to believe that there is a common link between the victims, but the investigation to intent is ongoing. So I don't want to say that definitively until the investigation is complete.
At what point did the red Ford pickup become a point of interest in the investigation?
And I'm trying to make sure I don't say anything that's not in the public record, but certainly I believe this has been public in the affidavit. The FedEx clerk saw a red truck.
Was that the turning point in the investigation?
I don't know that there was a single turning point. This all happened very quickly, as you'll see from the affidavit on March 20th. And as soon as we had probable cause, we were like that on getting a complaint and an arrest warrant. But it was really kind of a mosaic. I mean, there were different pieces that came together, which is oftentimes in real investigations how it happens. There's a number of pieces that come together that increase the probability that a certain person is probably the guy. And I don't know that there was a single climactic moment in the investigation.
Were any bombs set off after you were pretty sure you had the guy in your sights?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Were any bombs set off after you were pretty sure you had the guy who was committing the bombs?
I don't believe so, no. No.
Only the one he detonated himself with.
Only the one he detonated himself with, of course. And let's do two more, one here and then.
I'm sorry. Are those two stores that are referenced here the only ones that items were purchased from for the shrapnel, or were there others? Because I was told the Ace Hardware 29, some of you guys were there before that.
You know, I don't want to say whether there were or there weren't, because that's still there's still an investigation going on, and whether there were or weren't is not part of the public record, and then I'd have to start answering every question about what.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You say the investigation is ongoing, yet the suspect is dead. What unanswered questions are out there?
Well, as I said earlier, his motivation and intent, and of course, we want to make absolutely certain that there was nobody else involved. I think let's do the one last one, and then we're out.
We do see a couple of details in some of the materials that were used. I'd like to ask if we can get an idea of just how sophisticated these bombs were, and if you've discovered yet how he might have self-trained.
I think that's a good question for Special Agent Malinowski.
Thank you. As far as sophistication, there took a certain level of sophistication in order to build these devices and obviously not have an accidental detonation. And so we do feel that he had some level. He probably had practiced somewhere. There's probably a field somewhere that has other pieces from where he practiced, but they weren't overly sophisticated. But they did have some level of sophistication. And as we talked about, the one trip wire device was a little more sophisticated than his other ones, which concerned us. So that's as far as I can tell you on sophistication. Obviously, ongoing investigation, still looking at a lot of information. We still have a lot of leads to follow up on. This will be months more than weeks as far as us finishing up this investigation.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
All right, and that was the update there from federal and local authorities in Austin, Texas.
You mentioned this level of sophistication. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
What I'll say about the components is that they were pretty consistent throughout all 7 devices, in addition to consistent with what we found at the search warrant at his residence.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
We are taking a live look here for you at the White House. You are watching News Now. We do appreciate you joining us here worldwide. We're going to keep you. Go back out to Texas, though, and show you as Texas lawmakers interrogating leaders of FEMA and HUD as to why they are still, for some residents there, taking a while to get Hurricane Harvey relief.
To work with the NRG Center so that as there is a need that arose, people came together. And as we needed to rescue people, we found an amazing thing occurring in our midst. I will get the phone call from a city council member, of which we've had a number that have been here today with the city of Houston, saying, we have a group of folks over here, we need your help. But by the time we got there, so as in Kingwood or in Spring Branch or in other areas, we found that neighbors helped neighbors. and we did not as often have to go into the high water as we would have normally expected. And let me share with you something else, that we have a unique situation here in Harris County that is different from anywhere else in the country. You see, Precinct 4 is 1/4 of Harris County. I work with a body in Harris County, which if Harris County were a state, it would be larger than the entire population of Louisiana. We heard the reference to Louisiana earlier. Precinct 4, if it were a state, would be larger than 10 states. I have 7 cities that I serve. Earlier, Congressman Green was making a reference to his smaller cities, but they are only smaller cities in comparison to the city of Houston. They're actually significant cities in comparison to other cities throughout the state of Texas. On the west, I represent a part of Katy. Off of 249, I represent Jersey Village. Off of 290, Jersey Village. Off of 249, Tomball. Off of 45, I represent the township of Woodlands and Old Town Spring. And off of 59, I represent Humboldt. And then all through the region, I welcomely nestle the beautiful city of Houston within the arms of Harris County Precinct 4 in Harris County. But where there is not a city, we have more than 2 million people in this county that do not have a mayor. And your county has to render those services directly to those people. And that is why I welcome the comments of the Congressman Green and of Sheila Jackson Lee with regard to the desire to bring funding directly to the city of Houston. But do not forget the unincorporated Harris County. For the city of Houston would be the 4th largest city in the country, but unincorporated Harris County, if it were a city, would be the 5th largest city in the country, in the nation. And so bring it directly to the county as well as to the city. Do not forget those populations, to which we have as many underserved populations outside Beltway 8 as we have within Beltway 8 within the county. And we need not to forget their needs as well. So as the rescue continued, then we began the operation of the removal. And the removal operation was serious. But through cooperation with the city, with the county, with the contractors that we had in place, with TxDOT and others, we began to remove debris at a remarkable rate. We were able to remove more debris every 2 days than we removed in the Tax Day flood. Tax Day flood, we've heard reference to, is a 500-year flood event. Memorial Day is a 500-year flood event. We in Harris County, actually, in the last 3 years, we were in a drought. And during that drought, we talked, Congressman McCall and Congressman Culberson. Congressman Poe is not here, but he could not be with us today, but he was involved in this, of trying to come up with ways of trying to create some means of creating a multi-purpose lake, a 3rd reservoir that might have water for us when we were in the drought, as well as having storm protection. But there was not that public support at the time. I would submit to you that after Harvey, we have the public support. And the time is now for us to begin to look forward, to ready ourselves for the future, and to cooperate with the state, with the county, with the cities, and with all others that will hear, so that we can make our place a safer place, so that we do not have to ready ourselves, nor reach in the moment of heroic endeavor, but that we can hail the wisdom of these bodies coming together to prepare for the future. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Well, the gentleman has no time. I'm just kidding. But we appreciate your remarks. I appreciate your great leadership during this crisis and your friendship as well. And so that chair recognizes Amir Turner.
Thank you, Chairman McCall, and to the Ranking Member Thompson, and to the other members of the Homeland Security Committee, and also to Congressman Green, who's here as well. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and to speak to the ongoing recovery efforts from Hurricane Harvey. First, the scope of this disaster. In the city of Houston, over 135,000 single-family homes were impacted. Over 209,000 apartment units were affected. The total number of households run up to approximately 345,000. As you have no doubt heard, more homes flooded in Houston during Hurricane Harvey than in New Orleans during Katrina or New York City during Superstorm Sandy. While we in government refer to such human suffering in terms like unmet needs, I can tell you the needs of so many will require all of our efforts to help people overcome Harvey's effects on their lives. This includes not only the lost homes and lost jobs, but the impact on behavioral health and childhood trauma. The immediate effects were on rescuing people from harm's way. And to that, I want to thank again the men and women of the Houston Police Department, the Fire Department, the municipal employees who consistently went above and beyond to help their communities. But as we segue from rescue to recovery, we have not lost the same sense of urgency. When FEMA said it would be Christmas before we were able to remove debris, the city finished this first wave in the month of October. And I, too, want to acknowledge the work that the county did in this regard because we both worked hand in hand. That urgency was displayed by our solid waste department employees who worked 7 days a week, teaming up with crews from other cities like San Antonio and Dallas, along with the private contractors. People cannot recover with debris in their yards when the city of Houston worked overtime, again with a sense of urgency. The next item was planning for the recovery. And quite frankly, that has meant changing the way we do business. I named Marvin Odom, the former CEO of Shell Oil, as our Chief Recovery Officer, reporting directly to me and serving and speaking with my authority. Marvin's recovery team has worked across city departments to break down silos and stress the urgency of recovery, and has also worked with outside groups as well. My charge to Marvin Odom was to be transformational, to make the city stronger, to make the city more resilient, and to make me, if necessary, uncomfortable in the changes being proposed. And he has not shied away from bringing me tough decisions. One of those decisions was to make significant changes to our Chapter 19 floodplain ordinance, where we as a city will require all new construction to be at the 500-year floodplain, plus 2 feet. Homes in Houston flooded in presidentially declared disasters in 2015, 2016, and 2017. Suffering 3 500-year floods in a row, to me, means there is a new normal, and government should catch up. We now communicate, cooperate, and plan better with our partners at Harris County. And I echo everything that Commissioner Cagle had to say. And I will be remiss not to mention my partnership with Harris County Judge Ed Emmett, who has been a fantastic partner during and since the storm. Our flooding czar, Steve Costello.
All right, folks, we are going to switch away from this event, take you out to the Heritage Foundation, where the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, speaking on its global agenda for economic freedom.
Latest index of economic freedom. I'm here today because I believe that next year, and at least for the next 7 odd years, our position as the United States in the index will hopefully continue to improve. As of the June 2017 cutoff date for policy changes to be taken into account, we didn't yet have very many of the deregulatory actions that we now have taken. We didn't have many EPA reforms, and we certainly didn't have the largest tax cut and tax reform in history. So we hope that those very specific developments will help propel us up in next year's and in succeeding years. Since the index was created by Heritage Foundation and the Wall Street Journal in 1995, it's become an indispensable tool in promoting the benefits of economic freedom. It is used by governments, individuals, investors, businesses, NGOs, and the media in capitals and C-suites throughout the world. It is a recurring reminder of how important freedom is to individual and collective prosperity, and it provides governments, including our own, with an objective critique of the economic conditions in each country. It is these conditions upon which governments are held accountable by increasingly discerning and educated citizens. In short, the index is an essential service provided by heritage. I congratulate the 6 economies that earned the index's top designation of free, with scores of 80 or better: Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland, Australia, and Ireland. It is, to say the least, disconcerting that the United States is not yet part of this elite group, although globally, economic freedom has hit an all-time high. It's imperative that we acknowledge and address the reasons for which our country lags behind the 17 nations that are ranked above us. The good news is that thanks to President Trump, we believe our downward slide in the index over the past decade not only has come to a halt, but should be reversing itself. The United States was one of 102 countries out of 180 whose scores improved in this latest report. But the latest U.S. score of 75.7, about 0.6 of a point above the previous report, is the right direction, but it's coming from a base that was the lowest in the index's history, due to no fault of the present administration. It is an indication that after a decade of economic stagnation and decades of overregulation, we have hit an historical inflection point. 15 months ago, President Trump took office with a specific agenda to unleash our economy and improve job opportunities for millions of Americans. A key element of that agenda was lifting the heavy yoke of government from the backs of American businesses and workers. As I speak, the administration is continuing to review and eliminate outdated and ineffectual rules and regulations whose costs in time and money vastly exceed their benefits. The President has mandated that for every new federal rule created, at least 2 of equal value must be repealed. In fact, we've done better than that by a very wide margin. In the last year, the President repealed a whopping 22 regulations for every new one issued. Just today, I and 14 other cabinet members signed an MOU among us implementing the One Federal Decision framework for environmental review and authorization process for major infrastructure projects.
Right, folks, we are getting some tape playback right now of President Trump. Let's listen in.
So I just heard that they broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys, good man, and it's a disgraceful situation. It's a total witch hunt. I've been saying it for a long time. I've wanted to keep it down. We've given, I believe, over 1 million pages worth of documents to the special counsel. They continue to just go forward, and here we are talking about Syria. We're talking about a lot of serious things with the greatest fighting force ever, and I have this witch hunt constantly going on for over 12 months now, and actually much more than that. You could say it was right after I won the nomination it started. And it's a disgrace. It's frankly a real disgrace. It's an attack on our country in a true sense. It's an attack on what we all stand for. So when I saw this and when I heard it like you did, I said, that is really now in a whole new level of unfairness. So this has been going on. I saw one of the reporters who is not necessarily a fan of mine, not necessarily very good to me. He said, in effect, that this is ridiculous. This is now getting ridiculous. They found no collusion whatsoever with Russia. The reason they found it is there was no collusion at all. No collusion. This is the most biased group of people. These people have the biggest conflicts of interest I've ever seen. Democrats, all, or just about all, either Democrats or a couple of Republicans that worked for President Obama. They're not looking at the other side. They're not looking at the Hillary Clinton horrible things that she did and all of the crimes that were committed. They're not looking at all of the things that happened that everybody is very angry about, I can tell you, from the Republican side, and I think even the independent side. They only keep looking at us. So they find no collusion, and then they go from there and they say, well, let's keep going. And they raid an office of a personal attorney early in the morning. And I think it's a disgrace. So we'll be talking about it more. But this is the most conflicted group of people I've ever seen. The Attorney General made a terrible mistake when he did this and when he recused himself, or he should have certainly let us know if he was going to recuse himself, and we would have put a different Attorney General in. So he made what I consider to be a very terrible mistake for the country. But you'll figure that out. All I can say is, after looking for a long period of time, not even before the special counsel, because it really started just about from the time I won the nomination. And you look at what took place and what happened, and it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. I've been president now for what seems like a lengthy period of time. We've done a fantastic job. We've beaten ISIS. We have just about 100% of the caliphate, or the land. Our economy is incredible. The stock market dropped a lot today as soon as they heard the noise of, this nonsense that's going on. It dropped a lot. It was up, way up, and then it dropped quite a bit at the end, a lot. But that we have to go through that. We've had that hanging over us now from the very, very beginning. And yet the other side, they don't even bother looking. And the other side is where there are crimes, and those crimes are obvious. Lies under oath all over the place. Emails that are knocked out, that are acid washed and deleted. Nobody's ever seen. 33,000 emails are deleted after getting a subpoena for Congress, and nobody bothers looking at that. And many, many other things. So I just think it's a disgrace that a thing like this can happen. With all of that being said, we are here to discuss Syria tonight. We're the greatest fighting force anywhere in the world. These gentlemen and ladies are incredible people, incredible talent, and we're making a decision as to what we do with respect to the horrible attack that was made near Damascus. And it will be met, and it will be met forcefully. And when, I will not say, because I don't like talking about timing. But we are developing the greatest force that we've ever had. We had $700 billion just approved, which was the reason I went along with that budget, because we had to fix our military. General Mattis would tell you that above anybody. We had to fix our military. And right now we're in a big process of doing that. $700 billion and then $716 billion next year. So we're going to make a decision tonight or very shortly thereafter, and you'll be hearing the decision. But we can't let atrocities like we all witnessed, and you can see that, and it's horrible. We can't let that happen. In our world, we can't let that happen. Especially when we're able to, because of the power of the United States, because of the power of our country, we're able to stop it. I want to thank Ambassador John Bolton for joining us. I think he's going to be a fantastic representative of our team. He's highly respected by everybody in this room. And John, I want to thank you very much. This is going to be a lot of work. Interesting day. He picked today as his first day. So, generals, I think he picked the right day. But certainly you're going to find it very exciting. But you are going to do a fantastic job, and I appreciate you joining.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Any concerns about what the FBI might find, Mr. President?
No.
Do you have any concerns?
No, I'm not.
Did you have an affair with Stormy Daniels?
Why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. But I think it's really a sad situation when you look at what happened. And many people have said you should fire him. Again, they found nothing. And in finding nothing, that's a big statement. If you know the person who's in charge of the investigation, you know all about that, Deputy Rosenstein, Rod Rosenstein. He wrote the letter very critical of Comey. One of the things I said, I fired Comey. Well, I turned out to do the right thing because you look at all of the things that he's done and the lies, and you look at what's gone on at the FBI with the insurance policy and all of the things that happened. Turned out I did the right thing. But he signed, as you know, he also signed the FISA warrant. So Rod Rosenstein, who's in charge of this, signed a FISA warrant, and he also signed a letter that was essentially saying to fire James Comey. And he was right about that. He was absolutely right. So we'll see what happens. I think it's disgraceful, and so does a lot of other people. This is a pure and simple witch hunt. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please.
Will Rod Rosenstein keep his job?
Thank you.
Will Rod Rosenstein keep his job?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. President, on Syria, it would be just
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you all.
Say it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
We are getting clarity on that. Who was responsible for the weapons attack? We are getting some very good clarity, actually. Okay. We have some pretty good answers.
Thanks, everyone.
What are your options?
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a lot of options militarily, and we'll be letting you know pretty soon. Okay?
Thanks, everyone. Thank you all.
Probably after the fact.
Thank you.
Do you think Assad's lying?
Thanks, John.
Thank
Do you think Assad's lying?
John, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is a Fox 10 News Alert.
All right, folks, welcome to the Fox News Now stream. We are taking you out live right now near 41st Avenue and Encanto for a rollover crash here. Thank you to our viewers here watching worldwide on the Fox 10 News Now stream and Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live. We do appreciate you joining us here this afternoon for this rollover crash investigation, 41st Avenue and Encanto. We are working to get you guys the very latest details. We are monitoring this live with Sky Fox live in the air here. See there, they got the vehicle right there pinned against that fence. It looks like the fence got some damage there as well. See people around there saying, okay, what exactly happened here? How did this all go down? We are seeing the one car being towed away right now. We'll continue to try to get you guys the very latest details. Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. Fox10Phoenix.com as well. Always. For the latest updates, Fox10Phoenix.com, and we will be live on the air, Fox 10 Phoenix 5, 6, 9, and 10 this evening for you. All right, folks, it does look, looks like Sky Fox is leaving the scene here. For more updates, always head on over to Fox10Phoenix.com. Thank you. All right, with Chopper leaving, everybody, we're going to take you out back to Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross speaking.
The intent of reinvigorating U.S. manufacturing, production, and output. We are working to end years of one-sided and unbalanced trade deals that disadvantaged U.S. businesses and workers. Other companies simply have refused to play by the rules. Their continuous dumping of government-subsidized products has decimated essential American industries. It threatens our national security, and it saddles our nation with global trade deficits that exceed $500 billion annually. These deficits are draining wealth from our nation. I'm proud of the fact that President Trump has forcefully stood up for the interests of American industries that are essential to our national security. We believe that trade should be fair, free, reciprocal, and free. But free trade is almost like the unicorn in the garden. People talk a lot about it, but it's very, very hard to find it nowadays. Our tariffs are among the lowest of any major country in the world, and we have the least in the way of non-tariff trade barriers. Yet American exporters are plagued by every type of tariff and non-tariff barrier thrown against them, even by our most trusted allies. In Davos recently, I was on a panel with the director of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and to start things off, I asked him a question, said, if the United States is not the least protectionist big country, please tell me who is. He had no answer. So we are using all of our available tools to ensure a level playing field for our country's companies, workers, farmers, and ranchers. And we're already getting results. Our new deal with the Republic of Korea is lowering barriers to automakers and other key American industries, a major win for the cause of economic freedom. Maybe it will inadvertently push Republic of Korea up in your freedom index for next year. And we can also see the impact of our economic policies on the whole world. After a decade of stagnation, we're finally growing at about 3% again, something the naysayers said could never happen. The number of Americans collecting unemployment benefits is at a 45-year low. Consumer confidence is at a 14-year high. 2 million Americans have moved off food stamps and onto work rolls. And since Election Day, American companies have created nearly 3 million new jobs. Manufacturing sector is particularly showing renewed strength. In the last year, more than 250,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in the United States, compared to 100,000 manufacturing jobs lost in the final year of the Obama administration. New factories are opening throughout the country. During the first 9 months of 2017, the United States experienced a net addition of more than 4,000 new manufacturing plants. After decades of industrial decline, we have finally turned the corner. None of these positive things were happening before the election of President Trump. So judge him by the results. Judge him by the results, not by mannerisms, not by catchphrases, not by 160-character tweets. Judge the administration by its results. President Trump is unleashing American ingenuity. Now, of course, there's more to do, a lot more to do. This administration is next going to be focused on reducing government spending, something that will require more much-needed reforms. The last spending bill was quite unfortunate. The Democrats used the nation's need for the military to have increased funding as an opportunity to load up the bill with their own wasteful spending. But as the president said, he will never sign such a bill again, never. We will also continue our march to cut unneeded regulations. We look forward to working with Heritage to get the United States to where it belongs, at the top of the Economic Freedom Index. Again, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I gather now we're going to have a little fireside chat.
We are indeed. Mr. Secretary, like any well-prepared speaker, answered most of the questions in the context of your remarks.
Well, you probably have heard the president recently say the trade war, a trade war, has been going on for the last 50 years, or perhaps more. The only difference is now the American troops are coming to the ramparts, and that's what's causing all the kerfuffle with the other countries. We have a little editorial that I wrote in the Wall Street Journal some months ago that we're distributing around. I think it will give you a perspective on trade policy and trade barriers. But while that's being handed out, I'll just cite a couple of little arithmetic instances that you might find interesting. One of the concerns people have is a big trade war with Mexico. Well, we don't want a trade war as such with them or with anyone. But here's the fact. with them. Pre-NAFTA, every year, the United States had between a $4 and $5 billion trade surplus with Mexico. Does any of you have any idea what our cumulative trade deficit with Mexico is post-NAFTA? You think it could be as big as $100 billion? Anybody think so? Okay. Anybody go for 200? Oh, you can't bid against yourself, sir. How about 500? Nobody thinks 500. Nope. And did you think 500? The real answer is it's more than $1 trillion. So one result of NAFTA was to create a gap. We went from recurring trade surpluses to $1 trillion in the hole. It's a hell of a good negotiation, don't you think, to accomplish that? So that's why we're doing that. And to varying degrees, same thing is why we're having to re-examine other relationships. Now, I've done business in over 30 countries on the ground, importing into them, exporting from them. And I can tell you it's an ugly playing field out there. People do not adhere to the rules. They do not adhere to fair play. And unfortunately, the U.S. got itself into predicaments that it didn't need to. What happened in the immediate aftermath of World War II, it was U.S. policy, and probably not a bad policy at the time, to help rebuild Europe and Asia from the ravages of World War II. Well, that was a good idea. We needed to help them. And at that time, we had trade surpluses, consistent trade surpluses, and indeed we did until into the 1970s. The problem is the concessions that they made to the then struggling countries had no time denomination to them. So concessions that were totally appropriate to make to a Germany, to a Japan, to a Korea, to a lot of these countries back in 1950 are now totally inappropriate. And yet, because of what we've signed up for, we have relatively little flexibility. And because our tariffs are so low relative to everyone else, they don't have a lot of incentive to negotiate. So we've been trying to create some incentives for them to do so, and that's what a lot of these trade actions are about, particularly our enforcement action.
Well, Mr. Secretary, we only have time for one more question. Which one would you like?
Oh, my goodness. Well, well, I think I can answer both of them. First one I'll answer is pretty quickly. This talks about...
Well, would you like for me to read the question?
No, sorry, I'll just summarize it.
Okay.
The recent budget legislation was a deep disappointment to fiscal conservatives. Well, was to me too, was to the president as well. But as I mentioned in my prepared remarks, the Democrats took hostage our need for national defense. And because the Republican Party was splintered, the only way to get any bill through was to deal with the Democrats. And dealing with them brings a price of a lot of things that we would not have even contemplated in the normal course. So we were bludgeoned into it by fragmentation within our own party.
What do you say we could do here from the Heritage Foundation? Because yes, the Democrats have a capacity to bludgeon, but then so do we.
Sure. Well, I think the best thing would be, one of the problems with people with strong ideological fortitude is that they sometimes let the excellent be the enemy of the good. And that's a trap that I think we all have to avoid falling into. because the choice wasn't between a strong military and a lower deficit. The choice was between that deficit and no big help to the military. So the president had to make a value judgment. And at this point in time, given what's going on in Syria, the atrocities and the gas attacks and everything, given what's going on in Iran, given what's going on in North Korea, given what's going on wherever you want, he felt that the single most important obligation he had is to defend the American people and keep us secure. Now that we've gotten that big budget, they're not going to have the same leverage over him next time. But the problem is that with a very fragile majority in the Congress, if our side doesn't hang together, well, then we have to deal with the other side. And that's just a fact of life. So trying to get people to understand that we can't always get everything that's the most ideologically pure at a given moment in time. But the president announced today that he's going to be making some efforts at precision in the budget, and we'll see if we can get more support for that. He hates the bill that was signed. Those of you who watched it on TV know I was right there with him when it happened. And it was not his favorite day, I can tell you that.
Thanks to all our viewers here today that have been part of the Fox 10 News Now stream for our morning session and just wrapping up our afternoon session. We will be shutting down the stream all week long at 7 o'clock Eastern. Pilar is on vacation. I'll be with you, though, for noon Eastern tomorrow. Be part of the News Now stream. And don't forget, folks, we will have a special event stream for you tomorrow and Wednesday on Mark Zuckerberg testifying at the Capitol. We'll have it for you in its entirety right here on News Now. Thanks so much for joining us here, folks, and we'll see you tomorrow.